Judge Masipa is delivering her verdict in the Oscar Pistorius murder trial. We hear from former and current colleagues for more on Judge Masipa. And we take a look at how this trial's highlighted domestic violence in South Africa. A trial being watched by millions across the world. Will be bringing you extensive coverage on the judgment in the Oscar Pistorius murder trial. Hello and welcome to Africa Live, where we bring you African and global news from all perspectives. I'm Famida Miller. Also coming up in the next half hour, a story of hope and courage. A Nigerian Ebola survivor speaks out.
1 year old fired 4 shots at the door. It was an accident.
We begin in South Africa, where the fate of Oscar Pistorius is being decided. The Pretoria court has reconvened to hear Judge Masipa's judgment in the athlete's murder trial. There's been some surprise regarding how quickly she's been going through the evidence. Initially, it was expected that it could run into Friday, but some say it appears there could be a verdict today. Pistorius is accused of murdering his girlfriend, Riva Steenkamp, in February last year. He denies the charge and claims he mistook her for an intruder. The trial has taken 41 days over a period of 6 months and captivated millions. The maximum sentence is 25 years without parole for premeditated murder.
That the accused is guilty.
Right, let's now go live to the courtroom and Judge Masipa's ongoing delivery of her judgment.
Against, as a false statement, does not always justify the most extreme conclusion. In the present case, the deceased was killed under very peculiar circumstances. There are indeed a number of aspects in the case which do not make sense, such as why the accused did not ascertain from the deceased when he had the window open whether she too had heard anything. Why he did not ascertain whether the deceased had heard him, since he did not get a response from the deceased before making his way to the bathroom. Why the deceased, who was in the toilet and only a few meters away from the accused, did not communicate with the accused or phone the police as requested by the accused. This the deceased could have done irrespective of whether she was in the bedroom or in the toilet, as she had her cell phone with her. It makes no sense to say she did not hear him scream, "Get out." It was the accused's version that he screamed on top of his voice when ordering the intruders to get out. Another question is why the accused fired not one shot, but 4 shots before he ran back to the bedroom to try to find the deceased. These questions shall unfortunately remain a matter of conjecture. What is not conjecture, however, is that the accused armed himself with a loaded firearm when, on his own version, he suspected that an intruder might be coming in through the bathroom window. He was not truthful when asked about his intentions that morning, as he armed himself with a lethal weapon. The accused was clearly not candid with the court when he said that he had no intention to shoot at anyone, as he had a loaded firearm in his hand ready to shoot. However, as stated above, untruthful evidence does not always justify the conclusion that the accused is guilty. The weight to be attached thereto must be related to the circumstances of each case. In brackets, S. v. Mtsweni, 1985, Volume 1, SA 590, in capital A in brackets. There is also the question of onus. No onus rests on the accused to convince this court of the truth of any explanation that he gives. If he gives an explanation Even if that explanation be improbable, the court is not entitled to convict unless it is satisfied not only that the explanation is improbable, but that beyond any reasonable doubt it is false. If there is any possibility, therefore, of his explanation being true, then he is entitled to his acquittal. See in brackets, C. Difford, 1937, capital A, capital D, 370, close brackets.
Well, Judge Masipa, they're continuing to give judgment in the Oscar Pistorius murder trial, looking now at evidence and the evidence given by Oscar Pistorius while he was in the stand. While Judge Masipa has been a quiet presence during court proceedings, she's been very careful to appear neutral while presiding over the trial, but hers is a remarkable story too. A former social worker and journalist, Masipa is one of the first black female judges in democratic South Africa.
For many South Africans, Judge Masipa is a symbol of accomplishment. During the apartheid regime, she was arrested while protesting the detention of her media colleagues. As a social worker and journalist, she became known for her level-headedness, which she's kept throughout the Pistorius trial.
At no stage has she ever lost her cool, either with the defense or, Renel, the prosecutor, or whoever. She has always interjected, if that is the right legal term, whenever it's necessary. But I think overall, my personal view is that she has handled herself extremely well. She has struck a blow for, I think, the South African judiciary in general. But more importantly, I think for black women.
Masipa became a provincial judge in 1998 in a sector heavily dominated by white men.
She is not the sort of person to become emotive. I don't recall ever her making any emotive outbursts about anything, even with her colleagues. So the manner in which she has, conducted herself, I've been watching the case, like most South Africans, very closely. Again, that level-headedness, which she's displayed even when she was just a journalist, it is coming true.
But what other qualities does Judge Masipa have that will help her make a decision in this trial?
Go down quite hard.
She's a very good listener. She listens when cases are conducted in front of her, and she is very intelligent and would apply her mind to the facts. She will be persuaded only by the facts that were placed before her in a case, and you can rest assured that any outcome that she brings in a matter will be a very well-reasoned and very thought-out conclusion on the facts.
And the world will know very soon how these qualities have been brought to bear in the Pistorius murder trial. Maria Galang, CCTV.
Now let's return to Pretoria, where Judge Masipa is continuing that judgment.
About two concepts which often are confused, namely aberratio actus and error in persona or error in objecto. We'll take a 5 minutes break.
All right, court adjourning there for the moment, while our correspondent Dan Williams is standing by with more on events in Pretoria, and he'll be with us in just a few short moments. Do stay tuned. Now we move to Nigeria and we'll bring you more on that Pistorius trial as it happens. But first, let's briefly take a look at other stories making headlines on the continent. A Nigerian Ebola survivor has been speaking out about his ordeal. Dennis Akaga shares his story of how he survived after 5 days in isolation and what he now daily faces from fellow Nigerians.
Dennis Akaga's discharge certificate. He's still amazed he survived Ebola.
I'm a miracle, a testimony of someone who got healed from Ebola. You know, people were there before me. I don't know if you understand. People were there before me. People stayed there for like 3 weeks. People stayed there for like 1 month. But I went in there and I came out just 5 days. So it's a miracle.
But Dennis is in mourning. His fiancée, a nurse, died last month after she helped treat an infected Liberian-American man. She was pregnant.
When I went to her, tried to see how to console her, she vomited on me, you know. So I said, now I went in to clean myself, and I had to clean. I took her to the toilet.
Were you aware of the risks then? What were you thinking?
Yes, I was. But you see, if you truly love somebody, you understand. You know, some persons will say you are a fool. You are a fool. But you see, if you truly love somebody, I think you can go the extra mile. You can do a lot of things for the person.
Akaga's discharge certificate says he does not pose any risk to the community, but the people who live near him are fearful. Still, he says he won't let that get him down.
All I know is I'm going to live a normal life, and I'll continue living a normal life. But I want to make sure other people in every part of the country who have issues with Ebola, I want to let them know that Ebola is not a death sentence.
Only a handful of the confirmed 19 Ebola cases in Nigeria have died, but the World Health Organization says a surge in Ebola-related deaths is expected in coming weeks. Carol Oyola, CCTV.
Africa Live returns just after this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Egypt's ambassador to Australia says he hopes and expects jailed journalist Peter Grester will be freed sooner rather than later. Grester and his 2 Al Jazeera colleagues were convicted of spreading false news to defame Egypt. He was sentenced to 7 years jail, a verdict that sparked international condemnation. CCTV's Yasser Kim has more.
Comments by the Egyptian ambassador Hassan El-Leithi have given hope to the families of the jailed trio. The foreign ministry did not elaborate. However, law experts say there are only 2 cases where the 3 could be freed earlier than expected. First case, if the Egyptian president used his constitutional powers to pardon convicts, powers that Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has not used till now. Secondly, if the journalists win a retrial and a lesser sentence handed down. This process could take a year, but most trials in Egypt take a much lesser sentence after an appeal. Yasser Hakim for CCTV, Cairo.
Now, federalism remains an ongoing issue for Somalia. The provisional constitution makes way for a federal setup, and that means regions within the country could be more independent under a state system. But gaining that status requires approval from the central government. Somalia's southwestern region's bid for statehood was approved by Mogadishu. It's key to return the region to stability, but it's been met with some stiff opposition. Mohamed Imoge reports from Baidoa.
With this agreement signed in June, many thought the Southwest Regional Administration was a done deal. Opposing factions reached an agreement to form a 3-region administration. But that plan hit a snag shortly afterwards. The 6-region team disowned the agreement.
I am the president of the 6th Southwest State. I did not sign that agreement in Mogadishu. Who signed it? Not me, not my 2 deputies. That agreement is void. We do not recognize it.
Under the initial agreement, proponents for the formation of a 6-region Southwest state and those of a 3-region state agreed to form an interim administration, with Baidoa as its administrative capital. 2 months since opposing factions of the southwest state reached an agreement in Mogadishu to form a 3-region interim administration. Dissenting voices still emerge, but the central government in Mogadishu has either sent a ministerial delegation to oversee the formation of the federal administration in Baidoa. It was a proposal negotiated by the federal government and backed by the AU, the UN and international partners.
I think the southwest region of the three will work. The federal government of Somalia has recognized it, the international community has backed, and the neighboring countries, Kenya, Ethiopia and Djibouti, who are contributing countries to the AMISOM force, are here to help us. They are also the guarantors of this agreement. So we have all the complement that we needed, all the ingredients.
UK Ambassador to Somalia Neil Wigan held meetings in Baidoa with both teams to push for an inclusive agreement.
Clearly there's a very active political process. People are very engaged. We met ministers from the federal government, the technical committee, representatives of the 6 states agreement, and the other political figures. There's clearly a lot more discussion that needs to happen to form the Southwest administration, but we hope that that can happen as quickly as possible.
If this agreement is achieved, it's yet another step towards establishing inclusive federal states key to the country's political process. Mohamed Hirmoge, CCTV, Baidoa.
Now here's what we have coming up in business. We bring you more on day 2 of the World Economic Forum taking place in China. Sierra Leone has cut its 2014 economic growth forecast to between 7 and 8% as the ongoing Ebola outbreak cripples business in the iron ore exporting West African country. The country, which says it has lost up to $60 million in revenue in the last 3 months, as activity in the mining and tourism sectors dried up. According to the country's finance minister, a previous target of 11.5% economic growth this year was unachievable in the face of the Ebola outbreak. The economic outlooks for Guinea and Liberia, 2 other mining-dependent West African countries also fighting Ebola, were lowered by Standard Chartered Bank. And day 2 of the World Economic Forum, or the annual meeting of new champions, is underway in Tianjin in China. Our reporter Yang Zhengji is there, and he interviewed a number of business leaders for their take on how financial dynamics have evolved since the global financial crisis.
Over the last month, there has been renewed speculations over whether or not the U.S. Fed will continue to wind down its QE program. That's because such actions raised concerns about the ability of some countries, especially emerging markets, to withstand financial shockwaves.
If you look at the detail of the U.S. recovery, their recovery is creating more demand for heavy machinery, but not so much for electronics and the stuff that South Asia emerging markets export. So they can't rely on exports, they can't rely on a reduced risk premium and foreign money coming in. It means that they need to really focus on structural reforms.
Today, catchphrases like internet finance and high-frequency trading dominates financial headlines. So do these innovations actually make the sector safer or more vulnerable?
I think we're seeing 2 major trends in the financial systems. One of them is more regulations, especially in the developed markets, and the other one is a number of new entrants, with a number of, I would say, disruptive innovations. Here in China, of course, everyone has to think about Alipay, Alibaba, Tencent, new entrants getting licenses for banking. So it's very exciting to see what's going to come up with these new entrants that are extremely dynamic and in a way disrupting a very, I would say, traditional financial sector.
China is going through a series of financial reforms concerning interest rates and foreign exchange rates. How do experts assess these reforms?
Financial markets reform will have to be calibrated, but the direction is clear. There is greater marketization of the markets. Take the CNY daily trading band. We have changes in the A-share market, the IPO process, not to mention the Shanghai-Hong Kong link, and the Regulatory Commission has confirmed plans to expand the quota for qualified foreign investors coming in. So each one of these you see as movement in the direction of more marketization, more liberalization, more internationalization of the renminbi.
Here at the World Economic Forum, experts have devoted several sessions into discussing the state of the world's financial system and how it is evolving from the last financial crisis. And the discussions all revolve around one central question: can the world prevent another such financial catastrophe from happening? Yang Chongxi, CCTV, Tianjin Meijiang Convention Center.
Before near thought 4 shots at the door. It was an accident.
Now let's once more go to Judge Masipa's ongoing delivery of her judgment in the murder trial of Oscar Pistorius. We go live to the courtroom in Pretoria.
In terms of the rule then, because of A's intention to kill, A is guilty of the murder of C without the prosecutions having to establish an intention to kill C specifically. Recent case law, however, moved away from the ratio in Kuzwayo and Khoza on the basis that that ratio was founded on the outworn doctrine of Vesari in illicita and could no longer be supported. The current South African law regarding criminal liability is set out in S v. Mchiza, 1970, Volume 3, SA, page 747A. On page 752, Holmes J.A. explains the legal position as follows. I quote, I leave at something. Nowadays, criminal liability is not regarded as attaching to an act or a consequence unless it was attended by mens rea. Accordingly, if A assaults B and in consequence B dies, A is not criminally responsible for his death unless A, he foresaw the possibility of resultant death, yet persisted in his deed, reckless whether death ensured or not, or B, he ought to have foreseen the reasonable possibility of resultant death. In A, the mens rea is the type of intent known as dolus eventualis, and the crime is murder. In B, the mens rea is culpa, and the crime is culpable homicide, close quote. My view is that we are here not dealing with aberratio ictus, as there was no deflection of the blow. It would therefore serve no purpose to say anything more about it. We are clearly dealing with error in objecto or error in persona, in that the blow was meant for the person behind the toilet door who the accused believed was an intruder. The blow struck and killed the person behind the door. The fact that the person behind the door turned out to be the deceased and not an intruder is irrelevant. The starting point, however, once more, is whether the accused had the intention to kill the person behind the toilet door, whom he mistook for an intruder. The accused had intention to shoot at the person in the toilet, but states that he never intended to kill that person. In other words, he raised the defense of putative private defense. In S v. De Oliveira, 1993, Volume 2, capital S, capital A, capital C, capital R, 59, in brackets, capital A, close bracket, at 63 and 64, a distinction was drawn between private defense as a defense excluding unlawfulness, which is judged objectively, and putative private defense, which relates to the mental state of the accused. In that case, Smallberger J.A. stated, I quote, from a juristic point of view, the difference between these two defenses is significant. A person who acts in private defense acts lawfully, provided his conduct satisfies the requirements laid down for such a defense and does not exceed its limits.
Let's now cross to Pretoria, where Dan Williams is standing by. We've just been listening to Judge Masipa looking at intent around Oscar Pistorius' actions around the night that Reeva Steenkamp was killed. But before that, one of the most important things coming out of this judgment so far this morning is that Judge Masipa has said the state has not proven that this was in fact premeditated murder. Dan, tell us more about that and just how significant it is, considering that's the charge the state has brought against Pistorius.
Yes, that's obviously a dramatic morning here at the North Gauteng High Court. That big news that Judge Masipa has ruled that not enough evidence has been presented, not enough facts being presented to prove premeditated murder beyond reasonable doubt. As I say, quite a dramatic morning for that. That, of course, carried with it a minimum sentence rather, of 25 years in prison. So that is now off the table, but there are still some very serious murder charges still to be debated here for her still to rule on. She has also said about Oscar Pistorius that the accused was a poor witness and that he clearly wanted to use his firearm. So still some very damaging, some very difficult moments still to come for Oscar Pistorius. And the trouble is, of course, we don't want to prejudge exactly where this is all going to go. But that is now where we are with this particular verdict from Judge Masipa.
Right, Dan, we're going to have to leave it there for the moment. Thanks very much for that update. Dan Williams there in Pretoria. And we bring you continuous coverage of that trial in Pretoria as we await the verdict in that Oscar Pistorius murder trial. Well, that's it for this edition of Africa Live. Remember, you can send your feedback to us at africalive@cctv.com, and you can also stay in touch with us on Twitter using the handle @CCTV News Africa. I'm Famida Miller. Thanks for watching.